On my recent trip to Buenos Aires, I tipped a cab driver coming home to my apartment, and his reaction was priceless. It absolutely blew me away. I'll tell you what happened in just a second in this video. I'll also tell you what I found out about the real estate situation in Buenos Aires and the reality on the ground among Argentines about Milei's reforms, the investment opportunities elsewhere in Argentina, and finally, whether I think Argentina's on the list as a destination for the rest of the 2020s. The truth is, giving yourself an international lifestyle just isn't that tough, and it makes more sense now than ever before. International diversification is freedom insurance. If you want to know how I've done it for my family and how you can do it for yours for a lot less than you think, please subscribe, like, comment, and share with folks you care about. One of the great benefits of living overseas and constant travel is the perspective that it gives you on your own culture. The day of my cab ride story, which I'll finish for you in a second, was November 5th, Guy Fawkes Day in the UK, and of course, the day of a rather poignant US election, as it turned out. Just stop and think for a second about everything we've seen and had to put up with since the 2020s began. Mass psychosis in North America has pretty much been declared normal. In Argentina, things are very, very different. Stop and think. Go back in your mind to 2020 and the unbelievable bullshit that we had to live through with the whole COVID hysteria and the total nonsense that was being perpetrated on people. The election cycle, hyperventilating, blue-haired lesbians, Hollywood actors with Trump derangement syndrome, yelling and screaming and threatening to leave the country if Trump wins, right, et cetera, et cetera. And now that the election's over, a new rapid onset of a new infectious mental illness I call Trump victory derangement syndrome, where the whole idea is that suddenly everything is fine and nothing bad can happen now because the big man is coming back to the White House. All of these things indicate that there's a total breakdown of just regular people's ability to think clearly, to process information, and, more to the point, to worry about things that are worth worrying about. It's not like we don't have things to be concerned about, right? As I'm recording this, the US just green lighted the Ukraine, but of course it's not the Ukraine, right? It's US soldiers and NATO countries to shoot missiles into Russia. And everybody's waiting now on pins and needles to see what the Russians are going to do in retaliation. The people in Washington, their entire counter argument for why it is that they think they should do this, at least insofar as they're talking to the public about it, is, oh, Putin's bluffing. Don't worry, he won't use nukes. That's their argument. And so even though there are really serious problems for us to be dealing with right now collectively as a species, but certainly in North America, $36 trillion in debt, right, that nobody's still apparently concerned about, massive immigration problems, 2 wars going on, totally dysfunctional government system, stocks at all-time highs, banking system that's on the brink, and really no serious discussion by any serious people about sort of how all of these things are supposed to be addressed or dealt with. Instead, everybody gets excited about things like what you're doing in your bedroom and whether or not you should teach kids about sex in elementary school and blah, 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 blah. In Argentina and Buenos Aires, everything is different. Very, very different. People worry about real things, right? Not a bunch of made up problems that come from too much security, too much food, too much money, too many medications, too much time, too much of everything. In Argentina, what I find is that people are concerned about getting enough to eat. And so is Argentina too poor to consider, or are things really turning around with what Milei has been able to do? Well, first of all, the poverty is very severe. One Argentine businessman, and I met several while I was down there, one guy who lives in Uruguay as an expat Argentine, says in an article that he wrote, roughly 53% of Argentines are below the poverty line. 24 million people, he says, are living on less than $220 a month, and that 5 million people plus can't afford food. Okay, if those numbers are even remotely correct, then probably Argentina will be a somewhat volatile place. But here's why I think things are turning around. And I'm not saying that all of his assessments are correct. I will say that while we were in the city, I saw numerous examples of people not just sleeping in doorways and like you expect some amount of homelessness in any major city. Buenos Aires has 16 million people, and it's a massive metropolis, but also people dumpster diving for food. Okay, when you see that, it shocks you, like it grabs you, right? When you see somebody unapologetically, unabashedly, unconcerned about the embarrassment that they're digging through garbage looking for some food that was thrown away in a plastic bag that would still be okay to eat, and trying to eat it right there on the sidewalk while people are walking by. That's a shocking level of desperation. Okay, so there is that going on. I saw more than one instance of that. But the reason I think things are turning around and are going to turn around in Argentina, and my sense is that absolutely the people get what is going on. First of all, Vaca Muerta. The Vaca Muerta oil and gas field, it's the second largest gas field and the third largest oil field in the world. Okay, it's just outside Neuquén province. It's being developed. Chevron, Halliburton, YPF, which is the big Argentine oil company, all of these people are moving in to get a piece of Vaca Muerta. They've been pumping for a while. This is not a new field. It's been there for a long time. They've been bringing oil and gas out of the ground for many years now, but it's ramping up because it's finally safe to invest in Argentina again. And it's foreign investment into Argentina that Milei is now bringing back and courting. This is a big deal, right? Vaca Muerta, by some estimates, could raise Argentine GDP, which admittedly is coming off a very low level, as much as 50%. Now stop and think about that, right? As the master ingredient in all prosperity, if you have cheaper oil and gas, right? If your energy costs go down, every other cost goes down. Delivering things into the city, right, is now suddenly cheaper, right? And producing things is now suddenly cheaper. And all of the machinery of a modern economy that relies on energy is suddenly much, much cheaper, even if it dropped by 5 or 10%, right? Think of what a boon that is to a country that's struggling to get back on its feet. It's a big deal. The second point is about 90% of the people I spoke to, cabbies, folks that worked at the event in the hotel and the event center, the hippodrome, they understand what is happening. They get it. They understand why Milei is doing what he's doing, what the reforms are, why they're necessary. They're not PhD economists, right? They're just regular people who understand that the government has robbed them and lied to them for decades after decades. And now that somebody who actually understands how to fix that is in power, that he's doing necessary things. Yes, it's making life very, very tough. Real wages dropped something like 20%, right, when he took office. And he devalued the peso overnight in order to get some of his reforms. But he's chopping off regulations. He's firing government workers, what they call nokis. A noki is a little pasta ball, and they refer to the government workers as nokis because you can't get rid of these people, and they just sit around, right? They just hang around and don't really do anything and collect huge salaries. So it's a big burden. And historically, what Argentina's done is just print a bunch of money and make up for that so they can keep paying these people. It's a great swindle, right? And again, most Argentine people don't understand how the whole economy and monetary system works, but they do get that they've been robbed. And so they know that if things are going to get better, that big changes had to happen. Most of the people I talked to, with really one or two exceptions, I mean, there are people who are like, look, all I know is my money buys less. I'm not happy about it. And it's like, okay, fair enough. But it's not a super intelligent or perceptive kind of opinion to have. Obviously, if you have to dig out of a hole like that, then changes have to be made. There's going to be an adjustment period. But people are people. And, the question is, will Milei get it done in time before everybody throws in a towel and doesn't want anything to do with him anymore? If you look at real estate, we stayed in a 1-bedroom place, very nice, brand new building in Palermo, Soho, in Buenos Aires, a really nice, trendy part of the city. The owner, I believe, said it was $240,000. All real estate is priced in US dollars. For a 1-bedroom apartment, that's not cheap. It's not dirt cheap. It wasn't huge. I'm guessing it was around maybe 60 square meters, decent sized living room, little dining room area where we worked, and a kitchen and a reasonably nice apartment. Again, brand new. They had a little courtyard and a playground out back, 2 big towers there, new construction, all renovated. And so beautiful. But a $240,000 1-bedroom, small-ish apartment in a first-class, world-class city like Buenos Aires, it's cheap. I don't think the real estate prices are going to go much lower. What has happened is Milei deregulated. There were price caps on renting costs and all the rest, and people took their property off the market. And now he's lifted all of that, and the supply of housing has exploded because it now makes sense financially for people to rent their properties out. And so there's a lot of things in flux. There's a lot of moving parts to what is happening down there. I think your downside is probably capped. You have to understand, Buenos Aires is like a really first-class, world-class city for all of its problems, right? You get the kind of old world charm that you would get maybe in a European city with a ton of culture. We stayed there. We had unbelievable adventures. I'll tell you about those in a second. Other places that I found are very livable. They're not exactly cheap. You're not moving to Buenos Aires on the cheap, but again, you're getting an incredible city experience if you end up going there. And I think real estate is probably pretty reasonable for the experience that you're getting. The lifestyle is unbeatable, right? It might be the nicest, most pleasant, most affordable city in the world. It's certainly my favorite spot, and it's not really hard to understand why. There's a sophistication to Buenos Aires that you don't find outside of a city that size. Some of this comes just from culture and tradition. There's a dance culture. in Argentina, and Buenos Aires is a real hub. Obviously, tango is very popular there. That's deep into the Argentine culture. This is unlike any other so-called normal social activity, and it's massive. And the whole dance culture, there's a courtliness to it. There's an old world kind of politeness, and it's a throwback to a kind of gentler, politer, nobler age, if you will. You don't ask a woman to dance. You make eye contact with her across the room and then the dance. There's an etiquette to it. There's a protocol for how you're supposed to behave, and people take it very seriously. It's very pleasant. I read recently, or a while back, somebody did a survey about young men under 30 in the US. I've heard this in multiple places. Like some huge percentage of young men in North America have no sex anymore. So there's no interaction, there's no cat and mouse, there's no fun interplay between men and women in cultures like in the US and Canada, right? Everybody's on a computer watching porn or doing whatever people do, and nobody meets and nobody hangs out and nobody talks and nobody dances and nobody has any fun, and there's no interaction between men and women. This is impossible for me to believe, first of all, but in Argentina, I promise you that's not true, right? You see young men, young women going out, they're dancing, they go to clubs, you have a beer on the way home. It has that warmth that Latino culture has, but also with a twist of real sophistication that makes it very pleasant. It's very, very nice to be around. And so I can't say enough good about it. If you're a young person watching this video, there's hope, right? There's definitely hope. While we were there, we went to the Polo World Championships, which were held right in Palermo. There's a massive, massive hippodrome, which is where we went for the event. I took my family to watch the horses race. So we had the event during the week, then we watched the horse races on Saturday. And then right across the street was the polo grounds, and there was a world championship with, I think, teams from Brazil and Saudi Arabia. This is the highest level polo in the world. Just happened to be going on. It was totally free to the public. They let you in. It was absolutely magical and really exciting. I'd never seen polo live before, but it was an unbelievable sporting event to watch, especially at field level, watching ponies just sprint flat out and, watching these guys go at it for what is essentially, right? It's just like a cavalry charge every few minutes. It's unbelievable. The other thing in Buenos Aires I thought was interesting that really caught my eye is bookstores. There's lots and lots of bookstores, which tells you something about the people. It tells you that they read. It's a reading culture. The other thing is it's not just bookstores, and because there's so many, they're surviving somehow, which means people are buying books and actually reading them. But in the cafes, there's throngs of people that sit for hours and speak and eat and just enjoy one another's company. And so it tells you something about the priorities of the people in a town like Buenos Aires. And for me, all of that is very refreshing. It was very pleasant. So back to my taxi ride. What happened? Total cab ride cost $5.50. I gave the guy about $7. His thanks, his gratitude was so effusive. For a $1.50 tip, it was actually very touching. These are people that are struggling to work for food, to survive, to keep things going. The city functions, right? For a place that's been through what Argentina's been through, it's an astonishingly pleasant and functional city. The garbage is picked up and the streets are clean, much, much cleaner than places that you see in big cities in North America, New York, Baltimore, my goodness, Chicago, much, much nicer. And so tipping this guy a measly $1.50, which to me, of course, is nothing. I gave him that money because it was convenient for me rather than making change, and because I had a good chat with him on my way. And the guy was so unbelievably grateful and so effusive that it really struck me that the situation there is dire indeed. But these are really fine people. You get the sense that it's hard to find somebody that you don't enjoy being around in a place like Argentina. So here's my judgment about whether Argentina is on the list or not. You go to Argentina for the lifestyle. In Buenos Aires, in my opinion, you're looking at the best, most affordable, remaining first-class city in the Americas. The population is young, they're hungry, they want better times. Everybody works. There's no culture war because stupid ideas like the whole woke mind virus, Milei has exposed that for what it is, but it wasn't like it really took hold there anyway. It's nothing like what's going on in North America. And the changes enacted by Milei are working. If he can just hang on and people sort of stick with the program and he can get enough prosperity, the turnaround is working. It is working. I mean, what we see there is that they just have a deep, deep hole to get out of. So for me, Argentina's on the list.
Right now, you can join the X-Plan community for just $1. Click below to get all the details. Instead of passively obeying the lunatic decisions by cognitively impaired political hacks, we're building a future where international diversification ensures our freedom and prosperity. You'll get easy access to resources and contacts to help you structure your own international lifestyle, including how you protect your money outside the US banking system, how to quickly get legal documents that allow you and your family to enter a friendly, welcoming, peaceful jurisdiction when trouble hits North America, where to invest in top-tier income producing real estate, and much, much more. If you decide you want the convenience of private consulting, we offer that option too, but at a tiny fraction of what other so-called experts are charging. So you don't have to break the bank trying to protect your family and preserve your wealth in the chaos of the 2020s. Click below to get all the details and join the X-Plan community for just $1, and I'll see you on the inside.
Thanks very much. And remember, your freedom begins the moment you realize nobody's coming to save you. I'll be back with more great stuff.